Welcome in, friends and future friends, to this episode of the Sports and the World podcast. Whenever you're watching us and however you're watching us, thank you for making the Sports and the World podcast a part of your day. I'm LaDarius. Hopefully, you are well and safe. And I wanted to change up a little bit. I wanted to, I usually do these live, but, I want to, try something different. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But my co-host Haley, she'll get her back here, which we'll try get back here next week. She's busy being a rock star and doing amazing things. Um, this episode we're gonna of course talk about the NBA finals, talk a little WNBA, and I want to share my thoughts on what's going on in the world, Brown's big picture, and maybe sneaking a little college football talk with the whole Swirsky situation. But won't go too deep on it. But once again, let's kick off with Game 4 of the NBA Finals. And let me tell you something. I'm gonna tell you who this Knicks team reminds me of. When we get deep into the conversation. But let me tell you something. This team was down 76-49. They were down to the point where I'm like, this is not this is over. It felt over, and especially to be down 27 points. To be down 27 points at half at home in the Garden, and in the first half, listen, Spurs. They shot almost 54% from the field to the Knicks shooting 33%, almost a little over 33% from the field. And the big gap came, and that was from 3-point range, excuse me, in the first half. Those stats I read there. Overall, in totality, they shot almost 60% in the first half, did the San Antonio Spurs, and the Knicks shot a little under 41%. So wasn't great. So, like I said, in the first half, those stats I mentioned, 3-point shooting almost 54% from three for the Spurs and a little over 33% for the Knicks. This game felt over. This felt like the Spurs tie up the series, just play the same way to the same level you did in the first half. Take this series back to San Antonio 2-2. But the Knicks had other plans, meaning that they outscored the Spurs 58-30 in the second half, and more specifically, let's go back to those 3-point stats. The Spurs shot 17.6% for 3-point range, and the Knicks 55%. They went 11 to 20, and as from the field goes for the Spurs, they shot 20.5% from the field to the Knicks shooting a little over 51%. And I also want to talk about the situation where what the Spurs and this aggravated a lot of people, but this really got to me on the level of how can you blow a lead? The the Spurs reminded me of 20-3. Any Falcon fan who's watching and listening to me automatically knows what that means. When you have a big lead and you're facing an opponent of the caliber of like the Knicks. The Knicks are great. Just like how the Falcons played the caliber of a team with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. You have to match the intensity of the first half. You can't lower it. You can't take the foot off the gas. You have to go all in. You have to keep playing to that level. And essentially, this Spurs team, this is the second game that they've done this in this series. And we're just about to go into the fifth game. So essentially, 40% of their game, when you count the game that they're going to play Saturday, they've opportunities to win. And if you're De'Aaron Fox, you have a 1-point lead with 11 seconds left. Why are you even shooting that way? I understand this is a young team, but I would like to think of the players on the Spurs. De'Aaron Fox is the one guy who I would say veteran guy understands you can't do that because you put a team like the Knicks who are getting the momentum that it was 10, I believe it was 106, 105 at that point in the game. You can't give them the momentum. And then it just felt that the Knicks were going to pull it out. And And, Brunson misses the shot, and OG Anube gets the rebound, scored 107, 106. It felt like a flash. And this Knicks team, and the way that the Spurs reminds me of the Falcons back in Super Bowl 51, this Knicks team reminds me of my another one of my teams, the Chicago Cubs back in 2016, where it just felt like things were going in the momentum. If, against when they played Cleveland, this feels this way in this series. And when when I look back at that coach roster, I think of Anthony Rizzo, I think of Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, I think of David Ross, Dexter Fowler. Um, I think of when I look at that, I look at like Jalen Brunson. We talk about Jalen Brunson, Carl Anthony Towns, OJ Anube. So we talk about Josh Hart. We're talking about guys where the nucleus of the team coming together when it counts, and not nobody didn't tell them that they were supposed to win. Nobody said, I don't know, Cleveland might pull it out, and people, talking about for Cleveland against Chicago, and people thought, oh man, the Spurs should really win it. So the Knicks should have laid down, and they didn't. When you're in the Garden, the mecca of basketball, I don't care. This feels like that 2016 team, very, very much. And I get these vibes that listen, the Knicks know they can beat San Antonio on their home court because they did. They know if this series goes to Game 6, they know they can beat the Spurs because they did. The Knicks have all the momentum in the world, and if you're San Antonio, if you're Mitch Johnson, the head coach, you have to be disciplined. Discipline is the issue here, and I don't know any other way to put it. But the simple reality is, you had lost 2 games that you had in the bag that you could have. Like, why would they in the bag? Well, game 4, you had it in the bag. When you have a 27-point lead at halftime, you you should be able to at least. You may not win by 27, but you should have won the game, even if you won it by 1 point. But when the game was in San Antonio, and in game 2, and Wemby missed that open jumper, yeah, they won game 3, but it's another example of when you're playing a team like the Knicks, who had one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history, and you snap their 13-game winning streak, and then now they've won 14 games in the playoffs thus far. You can't do that against good teams. And I harken back to what I've said on this podcast previously. It's about turnovers, it's about tempo and time. And in basketball, we talk about possessions. Every possession counts. I'm not saying in the regular season it doesn't count, but when you are in the playoffs, look at the possession of of the first half and the second half between these two teams. Absolute reciprocal. For the Spurs, great possession, great field goal percentage. Second half, it felt like nothing could really fall down. For the Knicks, it felt like nothing could fall down, and it felt like second half adjustments, and it felt like everything was dropping in. The takeaway that I have is that the Knicks can win it on Saturday, or they can win it when they head back to New York this coming week. The simple reality is that what the Spurs have to do is that they have to learn to win big games, win close games. Yes, they did against Oklahoma State, but when it's crunch time, it's the NBA final. What I mean is that you can't make mistakes like that. If you're Darren Fox, you have no business putting up that way. That should have never happened. You had a lead that should have never happened. Now you put yourself in a position where you basically you got to win it out. There's no two ways about it. If you let's just say game if you win game 5, you got to go back to the Garden. And are if you If this game does not get to a game six, if this game doesn't reach game six, great. I would love a 7 game series. I think it'd be great for the league, great for viewership, great for everybody. But the reality is, the Spurs' issues have been turnovers and questionable missing shots in big time moments, and more importantly, just closing games. In baseball, listen, literally, when you're the closer, you have one job: close the game. Whether you have a 3 run lead or a 1 run lead, you have to close games. And you see, and that's the problem. I'm checking the camera, I'm making. But nonetheless, so congrats to the Knicks. Easy to root for. I guess the Cubs fan in me, 10th anniversary of the Cubs winning the World Series back in 2016. If the Knicks win the title, it's great for the city of New York. It's great for basketball. It's great for the NBA. And I'm not saying that the Spurs are out, but Game Five, they got to show up. Keep doing what they did in the like, and they've controlled the first quarter of every single game. It's just when we get to the back end of these games where it becomes tricky. It's like you have a great starting pitching. It's like your bullpen. You get to the bullpen, it gets really dicey, and that's what kind of the Spurs are right now. Hopefully, they can figure out turn the ship around. And speaking of turning the ship around, let's shift gears. And I want to delve into this whole Brendan Sorsby thing. I don't want to delve into the legality of it because I don't want to say it's boring, but there are people. Listen, I took criminal justice, but there are people who are way more qualified, like Haley. And maybe if Haley comes back on next week or so, maybe she can explain it in much better detail than I can. But what I will say is this: is that college football has a problem. I know it's obvious to say, but this we've reached a level with college football where we have to start to say we need a commissioner. If these major sports have commissioners, college football is an entity parallel to the major sports, and it has to be a conversation because this whole Brendan Sorensen thing, where you have teams who it's insane. Like we're not going to play, Texas. We're not going to play Texas. And we're going to change our scheduling, and it's chaos, and it's not great for it's not simply great. It's not great for college football. It's not great. It's not a great look for anybody because when we see coaches able to move and players having to, we had an issue with that. Now the issue is gambling in sports, these NIL. The NILs were built to be great. I tell people all the time, things that were constructed to be great will eventually have evils sneak in. Social media is a huge example. Social media was created to have people be social on media platforms, to be social, friendly, cordial. And then you start throwing in vitriolic comments, you start throwing disparaging remarks. Then it becomes chaos. And that's what college football has kind of become, where at its core, it was about these kids playing the game and we wanted them to get paid. I wanted them to get paid. But now we have a situation with the Swordsby where gambling on the sport. How do you handle that? I would love to hear from the president of the school. Maybe he's spoken, I don't know. But I would love to hear from the university because other universities have made the point like we're not going to play if this situation's going, and that's not a great look. It's not a great look whatsoever, and that's very concerning, and it should be very very concerning. And I kind of feel we are reaching a level where we have to have this conversation, and I can't believe we even have to have this conversation, but we have to have a conversation about what do we do and how do we go about it because we all love the sport, but with NIL and with coaches, you need a commissioner. You need he or she. You need to hire someone to govern this. You have presidents of these universities. You have commissioners of these conferences, but you need that level head who works as an intermediary in a sense, the same way that Roger Goodell does between the owners and players, Adam Silver, in that capacity, who works as the intermediary and get some kind of resolution on it. Because at the end of the day, the core problem is the we don't know how do you police it. That becomes the question. So that's my little. I didn't delve too deep into it, but yeah. But like I said on the podcast, listen, drop questions because if drop questions, I always say this on the live show. Drop questions to on my social media at LaDarius underscore Brown on Twitter or TikTok LaDarius underscore Brown on Instagram, Facebook page, Sports of the World Facebook page. The link is always go to my YouTube page. There's the link to everything that's there, and it'll be also be in the this episode as well. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the NBA thoughts. Your thoughts on this whole Brendan Swordsby thing. It's a lot to deal with, and curious to get your thoughts. And I'm going to keep you long. We're going to get more into WWE because I talked about Flash in Italy in the previous episode. So I want to kind of put a button on this episode, and I'll talk more about the W because by the way, WWE All Star voting is underway. Get your ballots in. A lot of great talent. Olivia Miles, you got Paige Beckers. There's a lot of great talent, and hopefully we see a lot of first time All Stars because it's great for the league and expansion has been great and expansion is great and it's shown with the Valkyries in their inaugural season that there's talent in this league. And when you give players who deserve more opportunities, this is what you get. This is you see the great talent. So vote in that as well. And before we get out of here, I want to talk about what is the sports and the world. Once again, we know about the verdict, the Carmelo Anthony trial, 35 years, and I won't go into the deepness of it. All I want to get into is something I stress a lot. It's conversation. We have to have open and honest dialogue about the justice system in this country and the perception, and there's always two sides to it. And what I believe, what truly makes this country is that we should have civil conversation because the system, simply put, it leaves the scale leads a certain way, and we have to have a conversation about that, or we have to understand why the system is. Because, in my opinion, it's a lot to unpack. And maybe if you want me to unpack it, I will in a future episode. But my thing is when I go online and I see the post on Facebook, uh, I call it Twitter, I'm not calling it X, and on Instagram, we're just using words. We're just saying disparaging words to one another. Hey, I won't repeat it. And we have to stop. We have to stop that because at the end of the day, we have to understand something. People profit off division, divisiveness, and we have to be united and understanding that there are no winners in cases like Carmelo Anthony. There are no winners. To be clear, nobody wins because somebody loses somebody in some capacity. Whether it's they'll never see him again, or they'll you can see them again, but they'll be behind bars, or you just never see them again. So there's hurt on both sides for the victim and for the person found guilty. All I ask is this before I get out of here. If you want to have these conversations, be civil. And I'm not saying that, you have to sit down and table people say no. People will try to push you to that limit and you just go no. If you're not willing to have an honest conversation about it, you know. Like I said last week, I learned the block button is fantastic and it's cool. So that's Brown's big picture is, like I said, I'm gonna get you out of here. And like I said, next week we'll probably have much more to talk about. We may have a new NBA champion by the next time. You and I see or hear each other. But once again, before we get out of here, like and listen to this episode and every episode of the Sports and the World podcast, Apple, Spotify, catch us on YouTube at LaDarius Brown for every episode and clips from the show. And friends and future friends, until you see and or hear me again, I'm LaDarius Brown, and if you've been listening, you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night.